Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe alongside Nick Wright, Kevin Wildes. We got Brian Westbrook with us on this Monday morning. Coming up, so Kevin Durant is out. Does that now lock up the East for the Milwaukee Bucks? We'll discuss. Guess what teammates are saying about Tom Brady? And if you can guess, what you won't guess is what James Harden looks like these days. He is a very changed man. But we begin this morning's program with more fallout in reaction to nationwide protests about social injustices. On Thursday, a group of high-profile NFL players, including Michael Thomas, Patrick Mahomes, OBJ, Ezekiel Elliott, and Deshaun Watson, released a video urging the NFL to condemn racism and admit wrongdoing and silencing them from peacefully protesting. On Friday, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell responded with this.
It has been a difficult time for our country, in particular, Black people in our country. First, my condolences to the families of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and all the families who have endured police brutality. We, the National Football League, condemn racism and the systematic oppression of Black people. We, the National Football League, admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest. We, the National Football League, believe Black lives matter. I personally protest with you and want to be part of the much-needed change in this country. Without Black players, there would be no National Football League. And the protests around the country are emblematic of the centuries of silence, inequality, and oppression of Black players, coaches, fans, and staff. We are listening. I am listening. And I will be reaching out to players who have raised their voices and others on how we can improve and go forward for a better and more united NFL family.
Nick, let's start with you. What was your reaction to Roger Goodell's comments?
My reaction to Roger Goodell's comments is I am so incredibly grateful and so incredibly thankful to the hundreds of thousands of my fellow Americans who over the last week and a half have taken to the streets, because while there is still work to be done, while the job is not even close to finished, the Overton window on this has shifted, and you saw it right there. What was once, whenever we talked about police brutality, we immediately had to talk about the flag or patriotism or the soldiers. Whenever someone tried to say Black Lives Matter, an obvious statement of fact, they were met with the nonsense retort of all lives matter, or you're actually the racist, or you're the one that's making it about color, as opposed to recognizing what the movement actually is about. And when you see Roger Goodell stare down into the barrel of the camera and say, Black Lives Matter, when you see Roger Goodell stare down into the barrel of the camera and say the NFL was wrong, I never expected that to happen. And it does not happen without the folks in the streets over the last week and a half. So I want to give Goodell immense credit here. Now, I understand folks are going to say it's not enough. And maybe it isn't. And Cap is still blackballed, and that will always be a stain on the NFL's legacy and the NFL's record on this. But right now, where we are today, we are closer to affecting positive actual change than we were 2 weeks ago. And the discussion is more honest than it ever has been. And Roger Goodell surprised me by giving that statement and releasing it Friday night. I also want to quickly give credit to Drew Brees, because I was very critical of Drew on Thursday. Drew then, while we were on the air, released an apology that I was skeptical of. Since then, Drew has released a first-person video that seems sincere. His wife has released a statement, and Drew addressed an Instagram to the current president of the United States, letting him know that he and Drew had been wrong on this, and not issuing a challenge, but not backing down from the inevitable challenge that the president was going to issue and did issue last night. So Drew and Roger Goodell in this regard stepped up in ways I didn't expect them to. And lastly, Wilds, the last point Roger Goodell makes is such an important one when he says the NFL would not exist without its black players. And that's why I always laugh when folks yell the stick to sports stuff when we're talking about this. You cannot talk about the NFL or the NBA without talking about race. If you are going to treat the athletes like they're two-dimensional beings instead of three-dimensional people, then we might as well just run those NBA 2K and Madden simulations and have that be our sports. But Wilds, we know them as people. We follow their Instagrams. We talk about who they date. And that means in the NFL and the NBA, we must be able to talk about race. And we must be able to talk about what matters to our athletes on a personal and societal level. And so I was very pleasantly surprised by how quickly over the last 10 days this conversation has moved after seemingly being stuck in the mud for the better part of 4 years, Wilds.
I think that's very well said, Nick. When you talk about the protest, the most optimistic thing that I've seen, or one of the most optimistic things, is when Steven Jackson had George Floyd's daughter on his shoulder and says, "Daddy changed the world." And you look around from like my hometown, there's 150,000 people in Berlin, Madrid, and Rome, and Sydney, and Japan. It's like the whole world feels like it's changing. And Brian, I know we talk about, teamwork all the time on this show and the value of a team, but to see the team come together in the players' video, starting with Michael Thomas, who a NFL employee reached out to him, and Michael Thomas quickly got this group, and to see the power of the players and the unity, and to see Patrick Mahomes look down at the camera and say, "I am Tamir Rice," that feels like a lightning bolt of power. And I want to say, Brian, this feels like a new chapter. I don't want to be, naively optimistic, but to me it felt like when the history of the NFL is written, the statement that we've had from Goodell in this last week will start a new chapter, not only for the NFL, but maybe for the entire sports world.
Kevin, I think you're absolutely right when we talk about the sports world and our world in general, not just the sports world, but our world in general. I hope that we're turning over a new leaf for our entire universe, our entire world. But my reaction to all of these things that have happened over the past week is that look how powerful we are when we work together. I mean, we saw current players, we saw former players, we saw entertainers, actors and actresses, rappers, singers, everyone on the front lines out there protesting over the last week and a half. They were saying that enough is enough. We want change right now. Of course, we saw the video of the NFL players, all of them. I'm talking about not just guys that sit on the bench. These are big-time players, Patrick Mahomes, Mike Thomas, Zeke, Odell Beckham Jr. A lot of the players that we all love are stepping up to the plate and saying that we are no longer going to stand quiet and allow racial injustice and police brutality to happen and not protest against it. And I think to your earlier point, Nick, when you have the commissioner of the most powerful league in the world say that we made a mistake and we didn't listen to the players and that Black Lives Matter, that's power. And that's us working together to gain that power and that control and try to make change. I have to be honest with you guys. In the black community, there's always been a kind of undertone that we need to work together better, and that if we work together better, we'll have a much better community. And while that still is true, I saw this past weekend and really over the course of the last week, people that don't look like me protesting just as hard as people that look like me. And to me, there was a value in that. There was change in that. And that's why it feels so different. I just want to go back into what Roger Goodell said 3 or 4 years ago when this all was happening. He said, listen, if you guys want to protest, do it in the tunnel. If you're out on the field, you need to stand up and you need to salute the flag. And by saying that, he also said that we're going to quiet Colin Kaepernick, and it made it okay for the country to ignore and not listen to Colin Kaepernick, because that's how powerful and strong the NFL machine is and the institution of the NFL. But by Roger Goodell coming out and saying that Black Lives Matter, that they were wrong, hopefully the people that listen, the machine of the NFL, that will change them as well. Here's a couple of action items that I think are very, very important. Roger Goodell said Black Lives Matter, that we're going to listen to the players, and that we're going to do all things that are going to help the players. Well, here's a couple of things that I think will help the players right away. We need more minority head coaches. At this point, out of the 32 teams, we only have 4 minority head coaches. At this point, we have no African-American owners. We need more representation as far as African-Americans in the ownership group. We need more representation in the head coach and the coordinator ranks as well. I'm talking about offensive and defensive coordinator, and also in the pipeline of making that are allowing blacks to be able to get to the higher positions in the front office as well. If we can have that type of change, then all these lessons that we've learned over this last week certainly would be for naught. I think it's really important. And lastly, and the NFL does a great job of giving back, but they need to continue to step up their effort in supporting the black communities that many of the players, over 65, 70% of the players in the NFL are black. Let's continue to support those black communities that many of these players are coming from. And if we can work together like we worked together to address these protests and all these different things, then we will actually see the change that we all are looking for.
Such great words, and it's so true what Brian said, the power of what could happen when everyone works together. And it feels like we finally, for the first time, have the league and the players and maybe even the fans coming together seemingly on the same page, working in one direction. So, Nick, I guess I would ask you, do you feel like this is a turning point? These sentiments, this messaging, these voices, the videos that are put out, do you think that we're finally at a point where all of this will result in league-wide change?
Well, I think more important than league-wide change, I think we are seeing, we saw over the weekend, it's resulting in actual actionable change. You see whether it's in Minneapolis or New York City, you see some of the reforms in regards, because again, it's important that we use the actual definition, the actual words here. It's not societal injustice that these protests are about. It is about police brutality. It is about state-sanctioned violence with no repercussions for the bad actors against predominantly black people. And we are seeing actual change. And I've got to say, anyone that watches this show, certainly the people that work on this show, our great producer, Sam Pepper, I think saw it so much last week. He called me to check on me. Last week was awful. I was about as down as I've ever been. And I can't imagine how black people were feeling last week if it was sitting on my heart as hard as it was. But the last 72 hours have been a hell of a lot more optimistic. Friday night, we had the statement from the NFL, which shocked me. Saturday, and credit to my wife for having us do this, my wife went out and bought 800 bottles of water, and we went to the beautiful protest in Brooklyn and handed that water out, and we saw firsthand an absolute rainbow coalition of protesters. Every color, creed, sexual orientation, and age. From little babies, toddlers, up to people who were marching in the 60s that are marching again now. I then saw on the news a protest in Vidor, Texas, which might not mean a lot to the nation at large, but anyone who's ever lived in Texas, which I have, knows what Vidor means. Its history is a sundown town, that to this day, it's 0.1% black, fewer than 50 black residents in the whole city, and they had a protest. We then saw, and I was amazed by this, that Mitt Romney, the most recent, or the 2012 Republican presidential nominee, Mitt Romney, marching saying Black Lives Matter. Think about how incomprehensible that would have been 14 days ago. So maybe I'll be disappointed. Maybe it'll turn out to be naive, Jenna. But it does seem like that finally this ball is actually rolling forward. And I'll say at the end what I said at the very beginning. Thank you to the folks who have been out there each and every day. The eight of our fellow citizens who lost an eye in these protests. The one young lady who lost her life in these protests. It has not been easy. And you have had to go up against the state, and you've had to go up against, at times, unlawful curfews and ridiculous obstacles that have been put in place of people trying to exert their First Amendment rights. But the reason those rights exist is because they can, at times, affect change. And I do think we're in the midst of that. And that makes me feel so much more hopeful, Jenna, than I was just Friday morning.
Back here on First Things First with our favorite coach, Eric Mangini. Coach, where's the lie? You're our guy. Playing a little drawing a blank right now. Bucs head coach Bruce Arians continues to be impressed by all things Brady-esque. This week, that includes TB leading workouts with his new receivers. Don't get him started on pliability, Wilds. NFL Network's Mike Girardi said, quote, Brady is the Pied Piper for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, Nick, Brady's chemistry with his new receivers this season will be blank.
Good, except for Godwin. And by that I mean except for Chris Godwin. Their relationship already got off to a rocky start when Brady deboed him for his number, gave him no compensation whatsoever, just said, thank you, I will take that. But more importantly, the other things Mike Girardi said was they're very excited in Tampa about possibly doing some 12 and even some 13 personnel. That means 2 or 3 tight ends. And Chris Godwin, who had an all-pro caliber season last year, but is in the final year of a mid-round rookie deal that pays him a couple $1 million, is awaiting a huge payday. And the more tight ends, the more Gronk is involved. You know Mike Evans is going to be a staple. Could be bad for Godwin's money, bad for his numbers. And so I don't know if Brady and Godwin, they didn't get off to a great start, Coach. I don't know if it's going to go great for him. But if you're the third string tight end for the Bucs, you got to be super excited. A lot of 4-yard hitches coming your way, Coach.
Their relationship is going to be consistently evolving. If you're excited about what Tom Brady's doing over Zoom, it's going to be really impressive once you get to see him and experience what he brings in person. It's like bringing Warren Buffett into your young hedge fund. The wealth of experience that he has, that he can share, and it's a role model, and that part is what's unfortunately missing for Tampa Bay right now. One of the greatest values he has is the effect he'll have on the locker room, the effect he'll have on everybody's work ethic, and the knowledge that he can share, even if he doesn't completely understand the system as well as he should. The things that he sees and the nuances that he gives players, it's really impactful.
Oh, we went through the whole thing. Force multiplier. It was right there, right on the tip of your tongue, and we didn't get it. And just America, for the record, Nick Wright is very studied. He's well-researched. He loves take integrity. There is zero proof that Godwin and Brady got off to a bad start. This is something he made up because he wanted to give him he was like, you should give him a Bentley. There's no truth to it whatsoever. So you can listen to Nick Wright about the rest of the show, but that one part is wrong. It's just not true. I went with Zoom-tastic. He says he's lighting up the Zoom. Do I believe that? How much are you going to light up a Zoom? It's like, oh, it's your turn to talk.
Hey,
but I'm still
my
going
6-year-old lights up her Zoom every morning, Kevin.
Yeah, but that's with emojis. You need the emoji, the skull emoji and the frog emoji.
That's a good point. That is a very good point. She uses a lot of emojis. On to Brady's replacement now. The force to be reckoned with duo of Stidham and Hoyer. A recent report says that although the two have been working together this offseason, they are, quote, fiercely competitive in hopes of being the successor to Tom Brady. To which I would ask, what's the alternative? You start. No, you start. You. No, you go. Nick, the Patriots quarterback competition headed into this season will be blank.
All right, unfortunately, I have to break from format for a moment. I'll answer that in a second. But America, I always get this wrong. Is it a third wall? Is it a fourth wall? I'm breaking one of them down. I'm pulling down the curtain. The reason Jenna Wolfe just gave a shout out to her wonderful 6-year-old daughter, Harper, is because moments before we went on the air, Jenna bellowed at Harper. You can have one Tic Tac. One. If you eat 2, you get none later. That absolutely happened. Wilds and Coach can verify. They heard it. We couldn't believe our ears. And Jenna then said, and this is an exact quote, I messed up and let them discover Tic Tacs. Now they think they can have a bunch throughout the day. Like, what type of Stalinist regime are you running over there? No.
What's your answer, buddy?
Is no defense. My answer is the Patriots quarterback competition headed into the season will be uncompetitive. If this isn't Jared Stidham's job, then I don't know what the hell's happening. If they decided that they're going to stay, that they didn't go after a quarterback in the draft or in free agency because Brian Hoyer might actually be the starter, then I think Belichick has a plan here, but the plan would already be off the rails. So, Coach, I've got to think this is Stidham's job, and this is going to be uncompetitive.
Yeah, first, in response to Kevin from the last segment, I was going to use force multiplier, but I can never figure out how well you like that phrase, Kevin. You know, and I
love
think
it.
in Jenna's situation,
He loves
I think
it.
in Jenna's situation, she's viewing these Tic Tacs as like food multipliers, like the girls are suddenly going to, jump off the rails with that. But I'm going to go with guided in this segment.
1.5 calories.
And that's it. Yeah, that's out of control. This competition is definitely going to be guided. It's in everybody's best interest for Stidham to start. And even though it's going to be a competition, it's going to be one of those competitions where Stidham has the best opportunity to be successful. And you want him to win the job legitimately so that he has the confidence of his teammates, but you also want him to win the job, and they're going to make sure that they do everything possible to make that happen. And they're going to go with Hoyer only if it's the last resort.
I went with center, Jenna, because when they did this little throwing session, they forgot to invite David Andrews, their center. So I don't want to get into like their planning, and that shows that they don't have a ton of prep if Stidham was organizing this. So Hoyer and Stidham, the report is they had to hike the ball to each other like it's, street football. So I went with centered. I don't think it's a huge competition if you're like nicely hiking the ball to your competition.
All right, let's move on. Talk some Tua now. Many wondering if the Dolphins rookie quarterback will see the field week 1. The latest to chime in on the Dolphins quarterback situation is Bucs quarterback whisperer Bruce Arians, who said, quote, "If he's healthy, I'm playing him. I don't think you learn anything holding a clipboard." Bet you guys anything he's got Brady starting week 1. Watch. Nick, Bruce Arians' comments on Tua are blank.
Sage wisdom by your sage cool uncle, as he said he likes to consider himself. This is Bruce Arians wearing his Kangol hat, I imagine, with a tumbler full of scotch, just, opining about football matters, saying, what are they even thinking? Don't they know the other guy's Fitzpatrick? Like, I coached a quarterback last year very much like Ryan Fitzpatrick, a turnover machine. Why on earth would they not go with their top 5 pick, who could have been the #1 pick of the draft, if he were healthy? This is sage wisdom by a very wise man, Coach Mangini.
Yeah, I'd say this is debatable. He likes young quarterbacks so much, he went and signed the oldest possible quarterback available. When you look at this, it's one of those things where the oldest possible quarterback available that he has. I was there his first year in New England, and he learned a ton from holding a clipboard. He was a different guy in year 2 than he was in year 1, and people have a hard time believing how much Tom Brady grew from his rookie season to his second season, but it was significant. And you could look at Manning and Luck and Roethlisberger and say, yeah, they played right away, and it made them the quarterback that they eventually became. Some would argue that they had to overcome the experiences their first year to become the quarterbacks that they became. So going in and getting your head knocked off your first season can also have pretty detrimental effects to guys' confidence.
That's what I went with. I went with Hard Knocks because it's going to be the school of Hard Knocks if Tua shows up in New England. Bill Belichick is 12-0 against rookie quarterbacks at home. So if you want to start Tua, sure. But last time, Ryan Fitzpatrick just beat the Patriots, ended Tom Brady's career in New England, and who knows what's going to happen with Bill Belichick. Probably win another Super Bowl. But if I'm a Dolphins player, I'm like, hey, Coach, did you see that 12-0 stat? And remember, Fitzpatrick just won the game? Why are we starting Tua? And Brian Flores wants to win games. I don't know if he wants to develop Tua. And also, Bruce Arians, mind your business on your own team. Let Brian Flores do his thing. I think Brian Flores is I would start God wouldn't like this.
Agreed. Let's end with the 49ers now. Their quarterback, Jimmy G, got them to the Super Bowl last season, but his head coach, Kyle Shanahan, still's got some constructive criticism for his quarterback. Says Garoppolo's next step is understanding coverages. Is that like me understanding gym equipment? Nick, Shanahan's comments on Jimmy G are blank. I won't flex for you.
Damning with faint praise. September 29th, 2014. Do you know what happened that day? It was 2,079 days ago. 2,079 days. That was when Jimmy Garoppolo played in his first NFL game. Okay? This guy, can we stop pretending he is this young quarterback babe in the woods? Understanding coverages, you've been in the league for 6 years, bruh. Like, this is Kyle Shanahan saying, like, I don't know what to say. Like, maybe next year he'll start understanding the difference between cover two and man, like, and a zone blitz. I don't know. But, yeah, understanding coverages would be nice. He'd probably make him less of a make-it-happen quarterback, his coach would say. So, yeah, all he's got to do left is understanding coverages. And maybe by day 4,000 in the NFL, and because he didn't have it by day 2,000, then maybe then he'll get it, Coach.
Yeah, this is surprising because one of the things that you do have to do well in New England is understand coverages. But in fairness to Jimmy, when you shift in motion like San Francisco does, the coverage changes. And when it changes, you're making decisions after the snap as opposed to what you're used to in New England, where you come out, you evaluate what's happening, and you have a pre-snap decision. So it is a different approach to things. And also, in fairness to Shanahan, he did say a lot of really nice things about Jimmy outside of the coverage aspect, like he could become one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Now, all that being said, when you only let the guy throw 9 times in the NFC Championship game, you wonder whether or not you really believe that.
We'll put up a quote from your guy, Patrick Mahomes, Nick, who is on the shop with my buddy PR. Shout out to PR. I literally didn't understand how to read defenses until like halfway through last year, he said. I understood coverages, but how to be able to pick up little tendencies defenses do, stuff that the GOAT Tom Brady and them have done. They know it, and they just go do it. I was just playing. This year, I could actually recognize more and more stuff. So, look, I think the sky's the limit for Mahomes, obviously. And if there's an element of truth to this, then Jimmy G will already be better than he already is, Nick.
Wilds, what Mahomes is saying is he just learned to understand coverages midway through his first year starting. You have Jimmy G's coach saying this about him. He was drafted in 2014. He's not a young player. Mahomes is talking about it when he was a young player.
Okay. People develop differently.
A different timeline. Okay. All right, got it.
People develop differently. I like it. Welcome back. Back here at Chris Broussard, talking about the Brooklyn Nets. With the NBA set to restart July 31st, we were all holding our collective breath in the hopes of a Kevin Durant return, but KD has shut that down, ruling himself out for the rest of the season, saying it's, quote, best for me to wait. But it's not best for us, buddy. What about us? Nick, what'd you make of Kevin Durant's decision?
Well, this is what I expected, and I think this is what's smart for KD. And I'm glad he put it to bed when he did, before there was more and more public pressure built up. Here's the fact of the matter. After Kevin Durant had his surgery, whatever rehab he was doing was with a projected return of the middle of October. And so if he would have known coronavirus was coming, the season was going to be delayed, could they have done his rehab to where he would have been good to go by the middle of August? Probably. But he didn't know that. So this would have been changing what the schedule was. And given all that Kevin Durant has on the line, I think it would have been far too big of a risk. Like, let's keep in mind where KD was right before his Achilles snapped. He was potentially en route to becoming universally accepted, what he's always looked for, the universal acceptance that he is the best player in the league. Had he led the Warriors to a third straight championship, with Giannis losing in the playoffs after winning MVP, with LeBron not even making the playoffs, and the way he was playing in that postseason after the rough opening few games against the Clippers, I think the vast majority of people would have said he's the best player in the world and potentially one of the, 10 greatest players of all time? Since then, people have foolishly said Kawhi's better than him. Most people believe Giannis is better than him. People correctly believe LeBron's better than him. He has to reclimb that mountain now. And if he were to come back too early, Wilds, or when his body isn't ready and suffer another injury, then we start saying, man, Kevin Durant's one of the amazing what-ifs of NBA history. So I don't think he wanted to risk that. And I don't blame him for that. He could have another 7 years of elite level scoring. That's what he's got to focus on, especially because he knows, Wilds, one title in Brooklyn catapults him into that top 10 all-time at least discussion. He wins one title in Brooklyn, and you know what becomes a real debate? Kevin Durant or Larry Bird? Who had the better career? That's what's on the line. So he shouldn't rush it by coming back earlier than he expected.
Yeah, I think you're right, Nick. The Larry Bird-Durant thing is fascinating. I guess I'm going to go with Durant there if it happens. So, Broussard, here's what's interesting. You know, I was crazy with the calculator, and I was like, Boogie's did about a little bit less than a year. Rudy Gay, Chauncey, Wesley Matthews. The problem is all those guys came back, fewer minutes, their usage rate went way down, their PER went way down. The person that we're looking for is Dominique. Dominique got hurt, and he got hurt in January. He comes back in November. And this is before and after his Achilles. The minutes are basically the same. The points went up. His field goal is basically the same. And his three-pointer, he wasn't a huge three-pointer, but now he started shooting a little bit more because he wasn't driving so much. So, Broussard, the fascinating thing about Dominique was, you know, when he first came back, 30 points right off the jump. He said, I knew I was good to go. He makes 2 more All-Star teams. And he's plays for 7 more years. That's the path I think Durant is on. I don't think he wants a minutes restriction, play 15 minutes, come right out of the gate, that first game, score 30 points, put Brooklyn on championship road.
No, I get it. And look, Dominique was much more reliant on his athleticism than Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's far more skilled than Dominique was. So, look, if Durant does not feel, if he's not 100% physically or even mentally, and that may be the case, he shouldn't come back. Yep. I get it. I'm fine with it because the mental hurdles always, when you return from a long-term injury, there are mental hurdles for every player to get out there and feel comfortable. But with Durant, it may be even more so because he came back during the playoffs last time and got hurt, even though this is a different situation. And he would essentially be coming back in the playoffs this time. My only thing is this, and I get what Nick was saying about him shutting it down now. That ends all the speculation. It's not a big story or big distraction now. But if you feel good mentally and you go to Disney World with your team, like if I was in his shoes, why not go to Disney World with the Nets? I'm practicing with them. The doctors have cleared me to play 5-on-5. I feel great physically, and mentally I feel good. I'm not hesitant. I'm not overthinking things. I'm not worried about the injury. Why not play if that's the case? I'm just saying, if it were me, I might be open to going to Orlando and seeing how I feel. You only get so many chances to win an NBA championship, and this could be one if he came back with Kyrie. But look, I'm not going to crush him. I'm not going to criticize him because it's his body and it's his mind. I'm just saying I would be open to going working out with my team. And you mentioned Dominique. He came back after 283 days from his injury, Wilds. Durant, if he were to play on July 31st, it would be 417 days since his injury. So that's a lot longer. So I'm just saying I'd leave the door open if it were me. I'm not going to crush Durant for closing it.
The reason that I don't think he can do that, Broussard, is because we saw, I think he's got to he's got to protect himself from himself because he clearly was not right to come back in those finals. But the outside pressure and noise, Jenna, became so loud that he came back anyway, and that's why we're on this path we are now. So, Jenna, if he goes to Orlando and say the Nets, have a first-round upset, and now all of a sudden they're a round away from playing the Bucks in the NBA in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Durant's like, well, could I give you 15 minutes a night off the bench? Could I do something? I feel like, Jenna, he's got to protect himself from himself given what just happened to him.
Rockets head coach Mike D'Antoni said James Harden is fired up for the return of basketball, saying, quote, probably the worst thing you can do is take basketball away from him. He used this to recharge and to get in better shape, and he wasn't lying. Check out this recent picture of the beard on the 6-week Jenna Wolfe training program. Broussard, you want in? I'll give you a good price. How far, Broussard, do you think a recharged Harden can take the Rockets?
Second round at best. Look, they're going to meet one of the LA teams in the second round, and they can't beat them. It's as simple as that. They cannot beat the Clippers or the Lakers. I know Mike D'Antoni and Nick Wright and Daryl Morey think the small ball is going to do something. It's a gimmick, all right? And before Mike D'Antoni was the NBA's resident mad scientist, it was Don Nelson, he was a very good coach just like D'Antoni, but guess how many times Nelly and all of his gimmicks got to the NBA Finals? 0. Same as D'Antoni. 0. Okay, the Rockets are not going further than the second round. The small ball has helped Westbrook and made them less Harden-centric, but guess what? After 4 years of being all Harden all the time, Harden now got thrown out of whack because he was shooting 37% before the break on the last 5 games, 25% from 3 because he had to get used to not having the ball all the time. Now all of a sudden in 8 games he's going to get used to it? Stop it. Nick, don't buy in.
Nick, I'm a little bit nervous that Harden took this like we're going small, literally. He looks very skinny. I like a big, bulky Harden. Not jokes aside, when he goes to the lane, I like him to be like bulkier and get those fouls. He's made more free throws than Giannis has taken. I don't know if this like skinny Reggie Miller Harden is the way to go here, Nick.
I actually had a similar take, which is some of his bulk actually, I think, helps him deal with the punishment of the long season. But I want to kick it back to Broussard just very quickly because 2 points. One is, Broussard, you're right. Harden has totally not figured out how to play with Westbrook. He's only averaging 34 points a game this year. I'm surprised they haven't moved him to the bench. Secondarily, though, one of your and many people's big criticisms of Harden has been because of the workload of the regular season, he wears down in the playoffs. Don't you acknowledge he now has 3-month break before the playoffs, and they have another creator on their team in Westbrook, so it won't all be on him in the playoffs. That should work to his advantage, shouldn't it, Broussard?
Yes, I will give you that. You're exactly right about that. My problem is not Harden. I love Harden. Harden's fantastic. But the problem is the way they play. And they don't match up well together. And you mentioned he's averaging 34 with Westbrook. Yeah, most of that came before they went to small ball and while the ball was still in Harden's hands. Now it's in Westbrook's hands a lot, and Harden doesn't know what to do when Westbrook has the ball.
All right, let's move on to Joel Embiid, who recently had this to say. Quote, before the season got shut down, I was on that path, especially after the All-Star game. My mentality just completely changed. First part of the season, it wasn't up to my standard, not even close. I was on that path to just changing all of that and just go make it happen. Nick, what does a dominant Embiid mean for the landscape in the Eastern Conference?
Well, listen, if Embiid has the postseason that it looked like he was poised to have after last year's regular season, where it looked like he had a chance of being a 30-point, 14-rebound, 2-block-a-game guy, then yeah, that does make them at least a real challenge for Milwaukee. But Embiid's issue has been consistency and health. He can say he was on this path after the All-Star game. After the All-Star game, he did have 2 awesome games. Then he got hurt, and then the world shut down. It's not like he had this great month of basketball post-All-Star game. That didn't happen. So, yeah, if Joel Embiid can be the guy it looked like he was trending towards during last year's regular season, then maybe they can take Milwaukee 6 if they get there. But otherwise, it's somewhat irrelevant to me, Wilds.
Yeah, we can throw up the stats. He only played 5 games after the All-Star game, Nick, and they weren't with Ben Simmons. So a lot of this is like I was on this path, like, well, you didn't have Ben Simmons. So if the Sixers can figure out, and Embiid specifically, can figure out how to coexist with Simmons in a real way, and they've got that killer, like, what are they, 29-2, 29-3 home record, take that into Orlando, I think they could scare the Bucks, Broussard.
You know, they're going to be scary because on paper, they're the most talented team in the Eastern Conference. But outside of that, no. You mentioned Simmons and Embiid figuring it out, Wilds. They haven't figured it out in 3 years, 2-3 years, whatever it's been. How they going to figure it out in 8 games? They got some problems. That is one of them. Secondly, they're mentally weak. That's why they've got the worst road record of any of the teams currently in the playoffs. And then, if against any of the other 5 top teams in the East, they would be out-coached. So those are some serious problems to overcome, and I don't think they'll be able to do it.
All right, let's move on and talk about the Nuggets. Their point guard, Jamal Murray, recently said, quote, "We don't think there is a team that can beat us in a 7-game series when we're playing at our best." Pair that with Nikola Jokic's new abs and beach body, and that sounds like a winner, my friends. Look at that beach body. Broussard, are we sleeping on Denver as a legit title threat?
No. I like Jamal Murray's attitude. That's how he should think. All right, we can beat anybody. We put on our pants leg, one leg at a time as well. But no, they got the same problem everybody else in the West has that's not based in L.A. They've got to play either the Clippers or the Lakers in the second round. That's if they get past the first round. They're 0-2 against the Lakers when LeBron plays. And the one time they faced the Clippers at full strength, the Clippers blasted them by 29 points. There's 2 teams, the Clippers and the Lakers in the West, and everybody else is on a lower level.
Nick, I think the Nuggets specifically get hurt going to Orlando. You lose that altitude. Are they a championship contender? I mean, I guess. They got the same road record as the Pacers. So if we're going to talk about the Nuggets, let's talk about the Pacers for the next question, too.
Yeah, listen, folks in Denver, I know you're mad at me. Last year I doubted your team, and then this year I picked your Broncos go 3-13. But this is a ludicrous quote. How about this? Here's a fun fact about a Denver Nuggets team that evidently nobody can beat them in a 7-game series. Prior to last year, them beating the Spurs in a series that went 7, even though Denver was the 2 seed, they hadn't won a playoff series as a franchise since Melo took them to the conference finals. And prior to that, their last series win was when Dikembe was holding the ball at the end of a 5-game series against the Sonics. There's only been 2 years in the last quarter century they've even won a single playoff series. How about this? No matter what their first-round matchup is, Dallas, Houston, OKC, they get one of the... No matter who they play in the first round, I think they'll lose. I think Denver is one and done in the postseason, unless they get Utah. Hold on. Revision. Unless they get Utah because of the injuries to Utah. But assuming they don't get Utah, they're one and done in the postseason this year. Sorry, Denver.
One and done. All right, the NBA is reportedly considering using NBA 2K video game crowd noise to simulate fans in the empty Orlando arenas. So cheers for good, boos for bad, other things for other things. Nick, you like this idea?
It's a great idea. I love it.
He already got booed. You got booed, buddy.
That worked.
Terrible idea.
That worked. We threw that up. That worked perfectly.
I'm done. I'm out. Wilds go. I'm out. That was unfair to me.
That worked.
No, I am
we
done.
just
I'm
proved
out.
that it worked. They should 100% do that, Broussard.
There's a part of me that would like to hear the talk, the chatter. You know, it's worked for the MMA.
He gets
cheering. Broussard hasn't even started yet. He hasn't even.
You know, all that. So that's the problem. But I'd like to hear the guys talk.
Yeah, me too. We had the same take. Why did my take get booed and his take got cheered? This is nonsense.
Because you're
it should
Nick
be a home
Wright.
game for me anyway. I'm out on this. You know what, guys? I boo you guys. I boo the producers. It's the highest production
We
quality
gotta
in the
go.
show to boo
That's
me.
it for us.
Ridiculous.
We're going to cheer you out. We're back here tomorrow morning. Stay safe, everyone. Have a great day.
It's ridiculous.